What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you live Thursday, August 29th, 2024. We're on the earlier side today, so get your coffee, get your Coke, Coca-Cola, whatever you need just to get fired up for the Ducks and this episode of the pod coming to you on YouTube and Twitter as well. Joined by Travis Rooke-Ley as well as ScoopDuck publisher and owner Justin Hopkins. Gentlemen, how are we doing? We are 2 days away from the season kicking off.
Fired up, man. Ready to roll, ready to get into Autzen Saturday. Going to be a toasty one. Looks like, 93 at kick last I saw. So rolling through my old yellow uniforms to see what I can rock in that yellow section. So just excited to have ball back.
I'm glad you specified Coca-Cola there, Max. I mean,
I was like, yeah, maybe I should. I don't want to advocate for any of that.
Yeah, you want people not to sleep for 48 hours? No, I mean, like Travis said, let's get this football thing going. I know we're recording Thursday morning here. There's college football later tonight, so I'll be out with a beer, hopefully at a bar that's got a few TVs. And I don't even care if it's good or bad college football. All I want to do is see Colorado lose.
Yeah, Colorado is one of the teams that's getting things going. They kick off the season, I guess the technical week 1, if you will. They kick things off tonight against North Dakota State in a game that has quite a bit of anticipation with everything that's always going on in Boulder. And Justin, you had the story for us yesterday about the latest headline around the Buffs, but this one actually had a direct correlation to Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, obviously just kind of an interesting, of course, this is something that happened. It actually took place last year, but the first we're hearing about it is, Colorado alleging that Oregon might have cheated and had access to their account, which can have practice video on it, can have things like that Oregon could have used against them. Just to me, for a team that won 4 football games, it seems really random that you would pick Oregon out of all of them, probably one of the toughest teams you played. There's a bunch of other teams that were not nearly as good as Oregon that you lost to or should have beaten. And so, yeah, I don't know. Apparently it's pretty clear that I don't ever think we'll expect to see Deion Sanders over at Dan Lanning's house for Christmas. I assume seems like there's some bad blood there.
It's just wild. Like, I don't know. I keep coming back to it, Colorado, like the old, we talk about this at school a lot, the old diamond knife analogy of you can cut, but you can't be cut. And I just think about like the stuff that's coming out of that program with the media and with who they'll allow to ask questions, this stuff. I don't know. I'm with you, Justin. Go Bison tonight.
I'm all in on North Dakota State. It seems like they're a program that's getting softer by the day, but we don't need to spend too much time talking about them. That was just a really bizarre headline that we figured was at least worth a mention, especially because the game wasn't even close, 42-6. If you lined it up again today, I think you'd probably get a similar result, if not worse, between Oregon and Colorado. But we're here to give you guys kind of some of our final thoughts ahead of number 3 Oregon against Idaho on Saturday evening out there in Eugene, Oregon at Autzen Stadium. But before we get into that, you guys have a very special opportunity right now. We are running a kickoff special at ScoopDuck. You can get 50% off an annual membership using code KICKOFF2024. That is KICKOFF 2024. You can use that to get the best in Oregon football and recruiting. Myself, Justin Hopkins, we got Lyndon Heil and Colin King as well, Chad Simmons, Steve Woltfong, all those folks to get you the best coverage that money can buy. So go on over and use that promo code KICKOFF2024 to get yourself amped and ready for the college football season. Travis, I know we were trying to kind of figure out when we wanted to do this show, so I wanted to kind of give you some runway here and give you the floor to get some of your thoughts on this Oregon versus Idaho matchup out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is one of those matchups that I think you'll see Oregon and Lanning obviously rotate a lot of guys. I think that's one thing that you've seen And I think Max discussed this last week, but this staff clearly puts a priority on like getting a ton of different options and personnel groupings in early in games like this. So I think you'll see offensive line shuffling. I think you'll see shuffling at defensive back. I think you'll see shuffling along the defensive line. I'm just excited to watch some of these younger guys that we haven't seen play yet. The Sadiqs of the world, the Amari Washingtons of the world, some of these freshman linebackers, new DBs we brought in. I think usually a game like Idaho can be a little sleepy for Duck fans because we probably have an idea of how it's going to go. But I think with so many players on our radar that we're looking to break out or impact transfers, like there's so many intriguing guys out there for us to watch.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Shuffling is a great word there because that's 100% what they're going to do. And this is a game. Like I understand it's Idaho, but it's still a game. So the game film is going to be super valuable to the coaches, right? We'll look at it and know if a guy makes a mistake because he didn't tackle well or, fumbled the ball, whatever the case might be. But the coaches will go back in and be like, hey, who's not taking the right angles? Who missed an assignment? Things that we won't really know because we don't understand the play calls. So, super invaluable, and really just having these first 2 or 3 games. Again, we kind of assume that they should handle Boise State fairly well, assume they should handle Oregon State pretty well. Just having those 2 or 3 games, like you said, for all those young guys, for all those new guys, and just really just settling that depth chart because I would say this, I'm going to guess that Lanning has probably told the guys, look, there's no set depth chart. Like, yeah, we'll go into this game and who will start and whatever, but this is a debut. This is an audition for all of you. So I'll be looking forward. Frankly, I'm more excited about the second half than the first half because I want to see these guys.
And that's one of the reasons that this game is so exciting, even though it's not a big time opponent, because of all the talent that Oregon has just injected into this roster. I'm trying to think of a more dramatic word to use than that, you guys, but it seems like it's pretty fitting, whether you're talking about the best recruiting class in program history or one of the best transfer portal hauls in the sport. There's so many new faces that are now on this team that are going to make a big impact, or at least have people talking and thinking, when are we going to see this guy on the field or that guy on the field? And that might be a perfect segue into one of the questions that I wanted to hit, and we could talk more so about this Idaho game. But who are we most excited to see take the field on Saturday? There's so many players. I asked this on the boards over on ScoopDuck, and everybody seemed to have a hard time nailing it down to just one person. But who are you guys most excited to see put on that green and yellow for the Ducks on Saturday?
I mean, for me, I'd go with not even a starter. Honestly, for me, it's Dante Moore. Just because the hype around him, obviously out of high school, it's a name we've known for a long time. And I just think the difference in surrounding talent, offensive line, play caller, everything that he's going to have is just going to make such a huge difference. I think everything you hear coming out of camp, out of Oregon, everywhere, is just like the natural talent that guy oozes. And I think that one thing I love that this staff does is when they bring in that second guy, you saw it with Ty Thompson last year, they'll leave in like starters. They'll call normal offense. They'll allow him to have a little success versus in years past, you've seen Oregon coaching staffs like throw in that second string QB with all our second string everyone else and hand off the ball 20 times. And it's no wonder we run into some trouble with the QB injuries. So I'm just excited to see Dante out there with hopefully some of the ones and see some of that arm talent we've been hearing about for a long time.
Since you stole my guy, I'll pivot. I would have said Dante Moore too, because it's for the same reasons you listed. I just want to see what the product is there. I think we know what Dylan Gabriel at this point is, but should you ever need him, it'd be nice to know that you feel somewhat confident in Dante Moore. I believe that's the case, but we want to see it. I see we have a comment here mentioning Brandon Johnson and Tion Gray. Tion Gray was going to be one of the ones I included in what I'm about to say. I was going to say it's going to be those interior defensive line guys, Amari Washington, Tion Gray. I really want to see that next wave. And what I'd love to see is when, Derek Harmon and Jordan Birch and those guys go out, that there's very little to no drop off at that position, because I think that's what it's going to take to beat an Ohio State and a Michigan and those really tough, really talented, big offensive line groups that they have. So to me, it's going to be that next wave of defensive linemen, if you will. And I did sing a lot of Amari Washington and Tion Gray, but you could name them, and I'm excited to see those guys.
Got to have talent in the trenches, and Dan Lanning, Tony Tuioti, and the rest of the staff have made that a priority with guys like Tion Gray, Jericho Johnson, Aiden Breland, Derek Harmon, Jamari Caldwell. All of those guys joined the fold for the Ducks this offseason. Since, Justin, you hit on the trenches a little bit, I'm going to go to a different level and talk about the defense. I'm going to go Jabbar Muhammad. I think Jabbar Muhammad is one of the most anticipated players on this year's roster because Oregon has kind of had that pseudo lockdown corner each of the last 2 seasons, whether you're talking about Christian Gonzalez, he was a solidified first-round pick, and then Kyrie Jackson, who was there last year and had a really good year. Rest in peace to him, of course. And Jabbar Muhammad comes in from the transfer portal after playing for Washington with just so much excitement. He's a technician. He just oozes swag and energy. And I think that's going to be contagious in this Oregon defense. And I think Duck fans are hoping that he's not the only lockdown corner that they have on that defense. But right now he looks like the best bet. But I'm also excited to see guys like Cam Alexander and Nico Reed. Nico Reed's a guy I've heard a ton about this offseason. And I think that those guys are going to step up and show that they're ready to take another leap in their development this year.
Yeah, and I think to that point, Max, I think you'll see, and we talked a little bit earlier about shuffling. I mean, the diversity of offenses we're going to face like in the Big Ten this year, I think that's really going to lead to, with that shuffling early on, you'll figure out where guys match depending on game and matchup. So I think you'll see matchups this year where a Nico Reed probably plays out wide. I think you'll probably see matchups where he may play in the slot. You're going to see matchups where our linebackers have to like split out and cover more. You'll see some games like Utah last year where like a really good personnel fit for a guy like Tysheem Johnson to play in the box. So going to the Big Ten, you see a much bigger spread of like different offenses that you'll face. I think you have those like certain Midwest teams that run like heavy tight end, a lot more like 12, 13 personnel that are better fits for some personnel packages. And then you'll go to an Ohio State, a Maryland, like a USC, probably some Washington that like go more 3 wide, 4 wide, where we have to match better in terms of like dime or more secondary guys. So I think that's the other great thing about early in the year is you'll have a chance to play around with those different packages. And like you said, Justin, like see how a guy looks here. Let's give him 20 snaps at nickel. Let's give him 20 snaps at corner. And obviously the coaches are better than us at figuring out, okay, now we've got Maryland this week. We're going to need to use him out wide versus this guy's better here. So just really valuable reps for all the guys.
Yeah. And, specifically with corner, I think we all feel pretty confident that Jabbar Muhammad's going to lock down one side of the field fairly well. That just means teams are going to throw to the other side of the field often, and you got to feel confident there. I mean, you can't put somebody over there and watch them get picked on and picked on and picked on, because then it really doesn't matter how good Jabbar Muhammad is. So, solidifying those guys around him, I think we feel fairly good at safety, but like you said, there could be 3-4 receiver sets, and you've got 2-3 corners out there. You've got to trust that those guys can do their jobs. And, of course, a great pass rush helps alleviate some of that, but you need it all to come together. And hopefully that's what we can find out this week if those pieces are there.
Let's stay on the topic of cornerback for a second. We've been talking about that position, and Sean Bryant was here in the comments saying that he wants to see Ify Obadegwu out there with some of the young guys and getting some run. We did get a pretty notable update on Wednesday from head coach Dan Lanning, who was asked about true freshman cornerback Dakota Fields, and it wasn't the best news. Sounds like Fields is going to miss some time with a knee injury. Full quote from Lanning as follows: Dakota is going to be down for a little bit. He had a knee injury. We're going to have to work to get him back. Don't want to put a timeline on it, but it'll be a while. So Fields is one of those corners that I got to cover out here in Southern California. The second guy that they signed out of Sarah, with Rod Pleasant being the one that preceded him in the 2023 class. Dakota Fields, you look at him, and I'm sure everything I've been hearing is that he's really changed his body since he got to Oregon. But even when I saw him down here in Southern California, you look at him and he is just like the perfect frame for what Oregon is looking for at corner. 6'2". At the time, he was probably on the lighter side, maybe around 180. He was listed on this year's roster at 6'2", 190. And I was being told by people close to the program that he was picking off Bo Nix a couple times in practice for the Fiesta Bowl. So he was a corner that was generating some buzz in the short amount of time that he's been at Oregon. So to see this speed bump, if you will, pop up is obviously not the best development. But if we're being totally honest, it's not the end of the world as far as injuries go for this Oregon cornerback room, because you have so much experience, and then not even just experience, you have so many options there, and you're turning into 4-stars. You're turning into All-Americans. So let me be perfectly honest. Like, no one wanted to see Dakota Fields play this year more than me, but I think Oregon's going to be all right navigating this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the luxury we have is, you don't need to rush him back. And that's the luxury of depth, is you can let him take his time, get back to full health, whether that's this year, whether that's, none of us want it, but next year. I mean, you just see the depth of that room and like the diversity of that room. You have your Dante Manning and your Nico Reed, who've been in the program a little while, seniors, like dependable and a lot of buzz coming out that they've kind of taken a little bit of a leap. You have your Cam Alexander, your Jabbar Muhammad, like you mentioned, two like impact transfers who have had a lot of success at this level. Sione Laulea, number one JC cornerback in the country. So, there's 5 guys right there that have all played college football at somewhat of a high level already. So I think while, there's probably 14 out of 18 schools in the Big Ten who a guy like Dakota Fields goes down and you're scrambling. But thankfully, I think our room's in a place where you can withstand something like that.
Yeah, the bigger loss here isn't the impact to the team. Obviously a great player, but the room can steady itself. The biggest loss is just his chances at development, right? All that time that he won't get back, can't be at practice, can't be getting, he very well could have been a guy out there getting snaps versus Idaho this week, which would have been completely invaluable for him. So yeah, that's the biggest loss here. Like everybody said, there's time. You don't have to rush him back. Great player. You want him back, but hopefully that's somewhat sooner than later, because again, you want him in practice. You want him going against Tez Johnson. You want him seeing, Stewart and all the guys, Eastu and all the guys. So yeah, that's the biggest loss here. Hopefully though, it sounds like we'll probably see him at some point this year. It just won't be for a bit.
So definitely hope that we'll get a speedy recovery out of Dakota Fields and wishing him the best. But let's see what else we can kind of dive into here as it pertains to the Idaho game this weekend and maybe just some more big picture thoughts on Oregon this season. I don't know if you had anywhere in particular you wanted to go, Travis. We could talk O-line, Charlie Pickard. That's a guy I'm excited to see. Just watching that guy's interviews get me fired up. But just kind of tossing it back to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, O-line, same idea. I mean, I just keep coming back to mentally how I don't love the way our bye set up, but beyond that, just the way the schedule sets up kind of leading up to that Ohio State game, I think it really just lends itself to we've got 6 weeks basically to mix and match, get some guys back from injuries and figure out kind of what's the best 5 if we're talking about O-line going into Ohio State. From everything I've heard, I think some of those dings to Bedford and Dave Iuli, I think the plan will be let's get those guys full speed ideally by Ohio State. So I don't think, while they may come back sooner, I don't think you'll see a bunch of mileage be put on really any of the group. I think ideally you go into that game full of health and having some experience at different spots. So I think you'll see multiple guys at center this weekend. Like you mentioned, I think you'll see some Charlie Pickard and you'll see Poncho at different times. And then you'll see a rotation at guard and probably even a rotation at tackle. I mean, there's no reason to put 85 snaps on Josh Connerly or Johnny Cornelius. So I think the goal coming out of this weekend will be, like Dan always says, who's above the line, who's playable. And if a guy's not playable, we think we might need, let's rep the heck out of him this weekend, next week, the week after. For me specifically, I would love to have a third playable tackle ready to go. So I'm going to be watching that spot for sure.
Yeah, offensive tackle is the one that concerns me most in terms of depth. And so, yeah, like you said, maybe for a game like Idaho, maybe for a game like Boise State, you're able to take some of those interior guys and stick them out there. and they might be a little bit, underwater to start, but those reps are what helps get them either to the line or above the line, like you said. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. If I see the comment, if Shaq McRoy, can be serviceable, dependable, just kind of depending on, how well he's been acclimated to the college game. So, yeah, those are the things that you really want to see, because that depth is going to get tested. I love the term that you used, mileage, because, at the end of the day, you really want to limit snaps for the guys that are known commodities at this point. If you can, you want to get them some reps, and then you want to get them out because you want to keep them healthy if you can. So, good news is the schedule sets up for them to have, 3, 4, 5 games that should feel comfortable winning if this team's as good as we think they are. So UCLA will kind of maybe serve as a nice little test, because they should be better than everybody else Oregon will have faced before them. So, we'll see. I guess more than anything, I'm just excited to see the crowd at Autzen this weekend. I think there's just kind of like this, it's like this quiet buzz about the team that almost everybody's afraid to talk about. Like, man, this team could be really good. This could be the year. And almost everybody's afraid to talk about it. But I mean, you see the ticket sales are phenomenal. I know the students won't be in full force, but I think we'll see a pretty full stadium this weekend. Like you said, it's going to be in the low 90s, more than likely 92, 93, maybe 90 around kickoff, whatever the case might be. So a great day for football. And I'm excited to see this game. And then I know we'll talk about it, but kind of see where some of the rest of the teams are at that are in that top 10 as well this weekend.
Well, just to tie a bow on that, Justin, just one more point. I wanted to hop in with the O-line. I think that's a position unlike almost any other spot where you almost just got to see how a guy handles himself when he's out there. I feel like the feel you can get in practice is something, but with offensive line, oftentimes you've got to actually throw a guy in there, no matter what spot, and see how he handles himself in a game. I think you saw that with Poncho last year. I mean, I remember during his recruitment, what was that, 2 years ago, a lot of us were questioning whether he's even a take. And he's running out there with the ones by week 2 with hardly any buzz. So I think that's one of those spots where we've got a lot of bodies in the room, and you'll see the staff just putting guys in different spots. And before you know it, you can kind of see, hey, who's holding up, who's got the strength to hold up, who's got, the knowledge of the system to hold up, and go from there.
Yeah. The good news is there won't be a player on Idaho, Boise State, or Oregon State's roster that's as good as the defensive line they're facing in practice every single day. So those guys might get out there and be like, this isn't that hard. This is actually manageable. Jordan Birch isn't over there.
Yep. 100%.
Plenty of excitement around the world of college football. So what do you say, guys? Let's zoom out a little bit and look at some of the other games that have our attention across the sport. But before we do that, I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to one of our sponsors here on the Ducks Dish podcast, and that is Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your dinner plans are tonight, but head on over to Ranchito at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. So, gentlemen, we already talked about North Dakota State and how we are backing them with everything that we have in our bodies. But another game, North Carolina and Minnesota, that is another one on the schedule for today. I think for me, maybe just big picture this weekend, I think another one has to be that LSU USC game, neutral site, Las Vegas. And somehow I didn't know this until today. It's on a Sunday. So we kind of get it spread out a little bit, which is awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been a huge conference pride guy, and I certainly am not with USC. So I think that game, it's going to be interesting. You got two teams with terrible defenses last year, both huge, defensive shifts in terms of their staffs, both bringing in highly regarded guys on the staff. But I don't know. I can just speak to USC specifically that I'm not going to believe anything until I see that defense actually competing and tackling and playing. So I think LSU obviously lost a lot on offense last year. At the same time, I've heard great things about their quarterback coming in, Garrett Nussmeier. I feel like they'll always have skill guys. So I don't know if it's the wishful thinking in me or the anti-USC homer in me, but I'll be rooting for LSU, and I've got LSU.
Yeah, I'm on the bubble with. I mean, I see LSU's ranked 13, and that's probably right around where they should be. I think that's a top 15 team. I don't know that that's a top 10 team. I think they just lost a lot. And there's nothing to be upset about if you're a top 15 team. That means you're pretty good. That said, they've got USC in the top 25. I feel like that's another damn gift for the Trojans, because if you watched them last year, I don't know how you say, hey, that's a top 25 team, and then look at what they brought in versus what they lost. I think Miller Mosby a good quarterback, but Caleb Williams was generational, and you couldn't even win with him. So it's like, yeah, I'm not sold on USC. I think they'll actually get their ass handed to them. They just aren't built along the line of scrimmage in the way Oregon is, and LSU, no matter what, is going to have dudes on the line of scrimmage. So I think they'll blast them out of the water. I'm with you. I see no reason to back USC, so I think LSU handles that one pretty easily. But that is definitely one of the key games of this weekend.
Yeah, the thing with LSU too, it's like they don't even need to leave their state to get some just dudes, and they got bodies out there in the South. So I think I'm echoing a lot of what you guys say. I'll believe it when I see it, particularly along the defensive line. We know they have a bunch of talent at the skill positions, but I just get weird vibes about just everything around that program. I'm not convinced Lincoln Riley is the guy for USC. So that's kind of the skepticism that I am heading into the season with, but I'd love to be proven wrong. I feel like college football is more fun when some of those big time programs, big name programs are relevant and they're good. But I can't say I'm going to be rooting for USC either. So that's my pick for a cool game to watch. Travis, what are you thinking?
Yeah, and I mean, just to be fair, I think before we move on, just to be fair to USC, I think what's working in their favor is most of their schedule this year, they're going to go there. They still have playmakers. They still got dudes out wide. They still got running backs. I think Miller Moss will be solid. Lincoln Riley gives us no reason to doubt his quarterback development side of the coin. So, they're just going to have such a talent advantage against a lot of these Big Ten defenses in terms of athlete that I think they're still going to have some success. What I don't like about the LSU matchup is the LSU offensive line is really, really good. They have like bookend first round tackles. And to your point, Max, you mentioned about USC's defensive line. Like, I don't think they're going to have much success. So I think you'll see USC score a lot. But moving on to another matchup, I think that a lot of us will have our eyes. Another little Oregon connection to that Florida Miami matchup, 12:30 Saturday. What are you thinking, Justin?
Yeah, I was going to go there, and I agree with you. That's a good one for you to pick. After watching Florida State basically fumble away their opener, it really feels like that ACC is wide open. For Mario Cristobal, who kind of finds himself with his back against the wall a little bit. I don't think he'll admit that, but I think we all know better. So, will he hired somebody that was specific to time management or something? I don't remember what their title was, but I read that the other day, which if so, and he listens to them, that's a smart move. You look at that Florida team, and Billy Napier's got the hottest seat of any major team in college football right now. And that schedule's absolutely brutal. So the crappy part is this really feels like a game Florida has to win, and I'm not sure they will. So at least they're at home, and it'll be interesting. This is probably one of the most interesting matchups of the week for sure. I will back into that with Clemson and Georgia, who I think is another one. And again, you put Clemson in that ACC talk. Like, Dabo hasn't recruited as well. Like, it's been fine, but it hasn't been elite. And here we are looking at Oregon as the number 3 team. Okay, I want to see how good the number 1 team is. I want to see how good Georgia is. Are they a complete team? Do they have some holes? Where can Oregon exploit them potentially if there's a matchup down the line? So, that would be the next one for me, which is crazy that we're talking about ACC football.
Yeah, ACC football doesn't seem like it carries the weight that it used to, especially with the dominance that I think we kind of got used to with Clemson. But then this transfer portal and NIL era of the sport came into play, and Dabo is kind of at risk of not being left behind, but we just have to wonder how much is his stubbornness with the transfer portal going to ultimately cost this team, because you have opponents that you're facing every week that went into the portal to elevate their squad. So I think I was really critical of it earlier on. Now I'm kind of like, hey, he's sticking to his guns. You can't really fault him too much about that. But now we have to see how the results ultimately pan out.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean, I don't. It's hard for me to believe that a unproven QB, young wide receivers are gonna beat Georgia. I mean, it's simply put at that. The game's at the Peach Bowl, right? So pretty much a home game for Georgia, I believe. Also,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got a hard time believing that Cade Klubnik, up and down last year. Obviously, like you mentioned, Dabo afraid to bring in any transfer receivers, which is such an easy spot to upgrade. Just bring in a couple proven dudes like you've seen almost every top program do. I don't know. I think that's going to be one that Clemson's going to have trouble scoring. And I think you'll see Carson Beck put up some points in that matchup.
Yeah, I don't see this one being close. I guess for me, I want to see how far away has Clemson gotten, because it's, 3, 4, 5 years ago, this would have been a top 5 matchup. This would have been 2 top 5 teams. And now you're looking at Clemson going, and I unlike you, Max, I don't credit Dabo for sticking to his guns, because we know college football is an adapt or die sport. And if you're not willing to adapt, it likely means that you're probably going to pay for those decisions at some point. So we'll see. Maybe Dabo can figure it out.
Maybe so. Travis, I know you got to get going here in just a second. So I don't know if you had any final thoughts before you took off.
No, just gosh, I'm so damn excited. I feel like this is just every year you get to this time of the year, and it's finally here. So hopefully all of us Duck fans in solidarity rooting Bison tonight, and see a bunch of you at Autzen Saturday.
All right. Sounds good. Big thanks for joining Travis. He is off to conquer the day, and now it's Justin and I to ride us off into the sunset. Justin, we'll see if we get any questions here, any comments that we want to address on the back end of the show. But I want to get back to one of the things that you mentioned, just like this quiet buzz or excitement. I don't really know how to talk about it. Like just that layer of excitement and just pizzazz. I'm looking for cool words to say at this point, but just there's something around this Oregon program that feels different. You kind of experience it every new season, right? I don't know if it's because we're getting into That Team Out West behind the scenes documentaries that have just been phenomenal access that we've never gotten for the Ducks, or what it is, but I think that would be a great thing to talk about.
Yeah, I know exactly what it is. I don't know the word for it. I don't think there's one word for it, but I know exactly what it is. It's that people are absolutely afraid to let themselves talk about how excited they are for this football team, right? It's like when the pitcher's throwing a no-no, you don't talk about it, right? We all know that. And it feels like everybody's afraid to really just let their feelings out and be like, I'm so damn excited. I think this is the team. I think this is the year, because, you've been bit, you've made it to the championship game and lost. We've heard about teams that we thought were good, and I'm talking about Oregon specifically, that ended up not being as good. So it's just that fear of kind of allowing yourself to buy in, and it's funny that just people are that way. And I think the one thing that gives me comfort about it more than anything is, regardless of what I say or you say or anybody that covers Oregon specifically, just look at all the national media that are absolutely bought into Oregon. And yes, those guys can be wrong. Stuart Mandel's wrong more than he's right. I mean, a lot of these guys can have misses, but we don't normally see a top 3 Ohio State team out there and then see Kirk Herbstreit pumping up Oregon, right? That's kind of unheard of. Like, that doesn't really happen. And he's not talking ill of Ohio State by any means, but obviously he's been on a few shows now where people say, hey, who's your natty pick? And has said Oregon. To boot, there's this. I think Georgia is the best football team in the country. I think they've got the most talent across the board, both sides of the ball. Kirby Smart's done it, knows what he's doing. Great coordinators, great coaches, great football team, right? They're beatable this year. Okay. I would argue that, for the last couple of years, especially 2 years ago, we looked at Georgia and I'm like, there's no freaking holes on this team. They're a freaking monster. And, they marched their way into a national championship. And after them absolutely demolishing Oregon in that first game, I had no doubts that was the best team in the country and was legit. This year, I think it's wide open. I think, you could sit here and look at Oregon and say there's holes on Oregon's roster. Yeah, I could say there's not enough depth at tackle. You're not sure about the second corner. Is the safety group going to be good enough? You can make all those, but you can make those statements about Ohio State. We don't know about their quarterback play. Okay, we don't know about their depth on defense. We don't know about their defensive line, to be honest with you. It's good, but I don't know it's elite. And the same thing for Georgia. They are good, but they're beatable. So I think it's all of that, right? I think it's just everybody being afraid to be like, oh crap, this really might be the year. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to get hurt again. I don't want to believe it. And I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, and that was a great way to put it. And I think another reason that people are hesitant to say it, and I think I would maybe put myself into that crowd as well, this is the first year of the expanded playoff. So I think we have to look at how long the season's going to be. There's going to be wear and tear. There's going to be guys that maybe we haven't seen play for Oregon very much, like someone like a Kenyon Sadiq. Like, he might be out there a lot more than we expected. But I think for that room specifically, it'll be because he's proving himself versus like, hey, we don't really have a whole lot of options here. We know the Ducks have Terrence Ferguson and Patrick Herbert there. So yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of put it, just as far as the excitement around this year's team goes. And to take that a step further, I think another reason people are so excited about this team is the main goal, I think, for any head coach when you're going about building a roster is having that two deep. I don't know if it was Mario that said it or if Lanning said it at some point, but that's always stuck with me. That is the thing that every program in the country is pursuing, having a legitimate two deep to the point where your starter goes down, another guy comes in, and there is no drop off. I don't know how close Oregon is to that, if we're trying to put a percentage on it or position groups, whatever it might be, but dang, it feels like they are the closest that they've been to it in a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's how Nick Saban did it at Alabama, right? That's how he built the dynasty, was getting that roster elevated to, hey, look, this 5-star goes down. He's been a starter. Guess what? We got another 5-star or a high 4-star coming in right behind him. Might be a little bit younger, but it's not going to be a massive drop-off. That's what Alabama did. That's where Georgia is at now. That's where Oregon is trying to get to. And I would argue that they're not completely there yet, but they are a hell of a lot closer than they've ever been, having a good quality two-deep roster. Some holes there, some areas they need to fill in. I'm sure Dan Lanning, if you could, catch him speaking honestly off the record, of course, would probably admit to that. But again, that's where I kind of feel like Georgia isn't where Georgia's been. I don't know that their two deep is, completely rock solid like it's been before. I don't think Ohio State's is. And, Alabama definitely isn't what they've been before under Nick Saban. So, yeah, you're right. It's no longer, and especially now with this expanded playoff, it's no longer about your starters. It's about, okay, you got your starters, but what else you got? You got anything back there? Because if your, offensive guard goes down or your corner goes down or whatever the case might be, if you don't have a dude, that spot's about to be exploited. So, and I will say this, you're right. The expanded playoff and the new conference are other reasons why people might be just kind of a little gun shy, if you will, on calling this the natty season, because, frankly, it's a better conference than Oregon's played in probably for a long time, top to bottom, I will say. Big Ten's loaded. Oregon got a favorable schedule this year. Obviously, you've got Ohio State and Michigan, but otherwise, it's a fairly favorable schedule. So, I guess we'll just have to see. I don't know. We won't have all the answers this week, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have, better answers about that.
There's a couple of final thoughts that come to mind for me, Justin, as we'll kind of wind down the show here. When we talk about the two deep and who do you got after that, what position is more relevant than quarterback when it comes to that? And I don't want to belabor the point because I would never want anyone to get injured, as we've talked about on the show. But I do feel like that is an area that Oregon has just been not where they need to be in the past couple of years. And I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but it's like now you have a relatively proven backup. Like, I don't know, is that overstepping to say that Dante Moore is a proven backup at this point? I just, maybe I'm putting too much stock into just the amount of reps that he got last year, and how that, I think, is just more than an Oregon backup has had in so long.
Yeah, without us having seen him this year, since spring, I would say it's fair to say he's the most qualified.
Qualified, that's a good
Yeah,
word.
he's the most qualified, right? He's got, live action reps. He started in Pac-12 games. Like, we know that there's something in there. Has he cleaned up some of the mistakes? Has he calmed down? Has he been able to maybe work on some of his reads, throwing motion, all those things? We don't know. But at worst case, I will say this. I think we all believe that Oregon could say, hey, we're going to rest Dylan Gabriel for the Civil War Oregon State game and just play Dante Moore the whole game. And maybe they don't score as much as they would with Dylan Gabriel, but I think we would all be like, we can still win this game. And that's without seeing him. And maybe we'll see him, and that view could change. But I think right now, today, a lot of us would be like, we could probably still beat Oregon State with Dante Moore for the entire game. And that's ultimately, I don't think, something that we've said in a while, because as much as we all liked him and respected him, you say Ty Thompson, and suddenly you're like, it might be a little bit closer than we'd like. And, you'd be a little bit more concerned. So, again, not picking on the guy. We all love and respect him, but let's just be fair about evaluating, the player and the talent. And Dante Moore is definitely a better player.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Austin Novosad, because he is someone that just looked like a star in the making out at that spring game. Of course, he threw that interception, but I think he could start at a number of programs, and that just speaks to the depth that Oregon has aimed to build in that Wilstein quarterback room. So he's another guy that you got to keep an eye out for when you're looking at Oregon's quarterback room. And the last thing I want to hit on, Justin, is just to your point about Oregon going into a new conference. I think that you have to have some level of confidence, even though you're going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. What Oregon has in their favor, God, the Pac-12 went on a high note, man. That was the best the Pac-12 has been in a while from top to bottom. So they had a lot of really quality competition, and I think that could have served as the perfect primer, not saying that the Pac-12 is equivalent to the Big Ten, but man, I think if you're talking about a tune-up year to get you ready for what you're going to face in the Big Ten, not only are they facing really good talent in practice, they did it last year on that 2023 schedule.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was a banner year for the Pac-12, and it took the closing of the conference for it to get there, and which is unfortunate. It's still unfortunate that the Pac-12 no longer remains, but obviously fortunate for Oregon and the others that they were able to get in the Big Ten. And now that we're here, I mean, I'm a traditionalist at heart. I mean, I love to keep traditions alive, so would have loved to keep the Pac-12 together. I'm not going to lie, but now that we're here and ready, and it's actually real and tangible now, I'm excited for the Big Ten. I'm excited for these matchups. I'm excited for, new rivalries to be formed, and just I'm excited for all these games that are about to transpire. And ultimately, let's be real, it takes all of the uncertainty out of Oregon's future. Moving to the Big Ten, whether we end up with 2 super conferences or whatever college football transforms into in the next 2 to 3 years, because we could say it's going to be the next 5 to 6 years, but it'll be faster than that. You feel like the Big Ten is going to be a mainstay in there. The SEC and the Big Ten obviously have kind of like all the weight right now. And, Oregon being a part of that really means that there's stability in the program, not only as the coaches, but in terms of conference and in terms of future. So all those things are very exciting.
Definitely think that we're in the Power 2 era, and Oregon has their home at one of those Power 2 in the Big Ten Conference. Justin, it's been an awesome pod, man. We just hit about 45 minutes. Really appreciate everyone that tuned in, and Travis got to make an appearance. Want to just tell you that we did have a preview pod on the Oregon versus Idaho game. That was yesterday's show with my guy Andrew Quinn. So go give that one a watch. Go give it a listen if you haven't. It's on your podcasting app. It's here on the ScoopDuck YouTube channel if you haven't checked it out. But before we get out of here, Justin, just any final thoughts before you head to Eugene on Saturday and we get ready to cover this one at ScoopDuck?
No, I know you already mentioned the promo. The only other thing, we didn't mention it, but the Notre Dame Texas A&M game will also have my attention this weekend. So, interesting to see, the Marcus Freeman experiment and how that, because his seat's a little bit hot, and then interested to see, how Mike Elko brings out Texas, a revitalized, Texas A&M. So that'll be another interesting game. I'm just glad college football's back.
College football is back, and we hope we can be your home for Oregon football coverage. Just want to give it one more quick shout out. You got to take advantage of this promo. 50% off a ScoopDuck membership using code KICKOFF2024. Come get access to all of the great content that we have going on over at ScoopDuck right now. No better time than now with the college football season kicking off. If you want to find more of that guy, Justin Hopkins, you can follow him on Twitter/X at JHopkinsSD. You can find me on any social media platform at mtorresports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel and share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.